Hello, and welcome to the Inclusive Education Paraprofessional Training Series. This training is provided through LRC-South at Rowan University in the Learning Resource Center Network in partnership with the New Jersey State Department of Education's Office of Special Education. As we begin, let's take a moment to look at how New Jersey State defines a paraprofessional. Paraprofessional means a school or classroom aide who assists appropriately certified personnel with the supervision of student activities. This role might also be referred to by the terms paraeducator, instructional assistant, and/or teaching assistant. Whichever term your district uses, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Paraprofessionals provide services under the scope of supplementary aids and services. New Jersey State indicates that supplementary aids and services are provided in the general education classroom to enable students with disabilities to be educated with non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. In this online workshop is designed through a series of 5 modules. The modules are presented by a team of 4 facilitators. The content of the modules is organized in alignment with the Council for Exceptional Children's 6 standards for paraeducators. The modules are listed on this slide and include 1, the responsibilities of paraeducators and the foundational concepts of inclusive education, 2, learner development and characteristics, 3, instruction in general education classrooms, 4, specialized and intensive instruction, and 5, learning environments and behavior support. The 6th standard, collaboration, is infused throughout all of the 5 modules, rather than being included as a standalone module. Also at this time, please note that some of the modules contain multiple segments. All module segments are required for completion of a module. Participants should also note that each module concludes with a required check for understanding. You will be prompted to complete this check for understanding at the final segment of each module. Now that we've discussed the overall structure of this training, let's dive into the first segment of this module. The objectives for this segment are to increase knowledge about current practices in New Jersey and to extend understandings about the roles and responsibilities of paraprofessionals in providing inclusive and holistic supports to students. In Module 1A, we will begin with the following topics: developing a culture of inclusive education, identifying our purpose, completing a critical thinking activity, discussing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and thinking through the roles and responsibilities and benefits of paraprofessional support. In order to better understand the purpose of this training and the role of paraeducators in supporting students in inclusive classrooms, it is important to understand the context and where we currently are with practices of inclusive education in the state at this time. On this slide, you will see several options for where New Jersey could rank nationwide for inclusive placements for students with disabilities. Make note for yourself which of these rankings you think is correct. Do you think that New Jersey ranks in the top 10, in the top 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, or 41 to 50? According to the most recent report from the National Council on Disability, New Jersey ranks 48 out of 50. According to these findings and the IDEA requirements for percentage of time students with disabilities are included in their general education classrooms, New Jersey is the 3rd most segregated of the US states and territories. More specifically, in New Jersey, only 46% of students with disabilities are included for 80% or more of their school time, and 15% of students spend more than 60% of their day in special education settings. Knowing that less than half of students with disabilities in New Jersey are being included creates an impetus for all educational professionals to respond. Another important finding in this data is to consider New Jersey's reliance on special schools and segregated settings. 7% of students with disabilities in New Jersey are placed in special schools, which is a considerably higher rate of segregation than other states. You may be surprised by the list of states shown here with the highest rates of placing students in separate classes or special schools or residential programs, including California, Hawaii, New York, New Mexico, and Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Maryland. However, now that we have identified the problem, we can respond with educational practices that begin to shift these statistics toward more inclusive opportunities for all students. So what does all of this mean? Each of these points are things that we'll come back to over the course of this training. But in order to establish part of our foundation here, we want to be thinking about the fact that special education is a service, not a place. It is a coordinated set of services that follows a student and that can be provided in a range of spaces and places and ways. That students should receive services in their neighborhood schools, that all students require meaningful access to the curriculum, that students don't have to have all of the same goals and outcomes to get benefit, and that supplemental supports, aids, and services are required to effectively achieve inclusive education. And so this forms the foundation of how we can refocus our question from can we include to how can we include, and how will we include all of our students in our classrooms. We will know that inclusive education has really become embedded in our culture when the term becomes obsolete. Think about that for a moment. The fact that societally we still discuss inclusive education suggests that there are alternatives. A culture of inclusion could suggest that education includes all, doesn't require further designation or differentiation. So let's get started in identifying our own purpose. What brings us here to this field and this work? In this activity, we are using a quick free write strategy. You're encouraged to capture your thinking in the format that works best for you, whether that's writing or typing through aloud, or using audio notes, through pictures or drawings, or any other ideas you have. In the next 2 to 3 minutes, answer the following question. Why or how did you become interested in becoming a paraprofessional? Pause this recording and give yourself the time you need to answer that question, and then come on back. Thinking about our purpose is going to form the foundation for our critical thinking question. Is help always helpful? The article accessible here through the link, and also the web address is provided should you need to access it there. This article asks us as educators to think more critically towards ways of merging respect and help to center diversity as normal and diverse people as valuable. Think about these conceptualizations and how they're enacted in schools every day. Pause this recording now and read the article. In your notes, react to the following questions. What are your key takeaways from the article? Does the article shift how you think about your professional role? Why or why not? And back to that key question, is help always helpful? This article asked us to think about friendship and help, the politics of help, responses to the diversity that will allow us to move from marginalization to valuing. Do you make connections to the article or maybe the scenario with the third graders in terms of what you're seeing at your school? In your role as a paraprofessional, how can you begin to ensure that the helper-helpee relationship is not unidirectional, where an able-bodied student is always, quote, helping a student with a disability? How can we merge those concepts of respect and help in ways that support equal worth, mutual benefit, and belonging for all students? This is really our charge. Perhaps you already have some ideas, Be sure to write them down as part of your reflective thinking in this first module. Perhaps you'll identify others as you move through this training, and I would encourage you to come back to your notes so that you can hold on to your ideas. At this time, let's also come back to the two overarching questions. Why or how did you become interested in being a paraprofessional? Does this article help you think any differently about your role, or particularly toward the goals of empathy and social justice and how we would enact that? What about the question, is help always helpful? If you could talk to another paraprofessional right now while completing this training, what would you want to say about these questions and your reactions? I hope that you might find an opportunity to talk through your ideas with a colleague sometime soon. On this slide, there are two side-by-side images of pyramids. You might recognize the first pyramid on the left. This is an image of Maslow's hierarchy of needs as it was originally articulated by the early work of Abraham Maslow. On the right, there is an adapted image of this pyramid, which Norman Kuntz offered as a way to illustrate how educational practices have inverted Maslow's hierarchy of needs and created a situation whereby students' belonging in schools and classrooms is contingent upon the student reaching achievement and respect, instead of providing a foundation for that next level of need and growth. As an example, we might see this exclusion play out for a student who is not given access to the general education classroom or curriculum or exposure to higher level academics before completing a specific skill, such as a student who's not taught any processes or procedures for completing 2- or 3-digit multiplication problems because they have not yet mastered memorization of basic multiplication facts. In another kind of example, might be a student you might have a student whose belonging and participation in the classroom is contingent upon first behaving in a particular or expected or normative ways. Perhaps the student participates in their general education classroom at specific times, or is it placed in a special class setting, such as, quote, a behavior classroom. And so as we think about some of these tensions that we begin to see emerging around where we are with current practices and how we are seeing some of these critical opportunities for both inclusion or exclusion, this is the time to think about paraprofessionals' roles and responsibilities and recognize that collaboration is key. You might recall from the introduction that collaboration is incorporated into all of these modules in this training. That was intentional, as collaboration is a critical component to all the work that we do in education and to your role as paraprofessionals, who are an important part of the educational team. On this slide, you see an image of a document shown here for general education goals and outcomes. That document is linked in the title of the slide and provided in the references. Open this link to access the form, which lists inclusive opportunities for support and collaboration for teachers, support staff, students, and peers across various domains. This resource will be referenced throughout the training and in other modules where specific aspects directly apply to the content. Here you will want to note the emphasis and expectation for strength-based approaches and collaboration among all stakeholders. We recognize the important role that each of you serve for students. When implemented well, paraprofessionals provide essential supports that allow all students, including students with disabilities, to reach their fullest potential in the general education classroom. Some of those benefits include, but are not limited to, providing additional time and attention for students, emotional support, providing opportunities for connection and relationship building, building encouragement and confidence, communication support, providing adaptations and modifications, providing environmental supports, supporting peer support, assisting with co-regulation, community building, providing positive models for students, supporting educators, and many more. Some of the key ideas and a summary of the key ideas in this module as a review is that currently New Jersey is reporting some of the lowest rates of inclusion and the highest rates of using segregated educational placements in the country. Special education is a coordinated set of services that are provided to the student, and that belonging and access to general education is not contingent upon proving readiness or able-bodied standards. Inclusive education requires a culture shift in schools, and every one of us shares responsibility in this collaborative effort. In closing to this introductory module, thank you for being here to support students. We know that the paraeducator is often key to how inclusive a student's education is by how they support social interactions, make academic content accessible, and support the comfort needs of the student. Our goal in this training is to provide paraprofessionals with a strong foundation for inclusive education and inclusive practices that can be used in your important work with students. Should you want to look more deeply into any of the resources used or cited in this module, they are listed here for you on the reference slide, as well as the image credit slide. Thank you, and this completes Module 1A.